I never imagined that a paralyzed boy could find hope in a stranger's leftovers. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It all started in the vibrant chaos of the city, where the smells of street food mixed with the distant sounds of laughter and life. My heart was racing, but not for the reasons you might think. I was waiting for a miracle. It was a late afternoon, the kind when shadows grew longer and the golden sun began its slow descent. I sat by the old park bench, my wheelchair creaking with every tiny movement. The world moved around me, children playing, lovers laughing, while I felt stuck in a web of pain and grief. Each heartbeat rang in my ears like a countdown. Time felt different for me. It was both still and racing away. My family tried their best. My mom's worried eyes, my dad whispering comforting words, my little sister clinging to my arm, as if she thought love alone could heal me. But they didn't fully understand. They couldn't know the relentless ache in my soul. I was 11, trapped in a body that failed me, yearning for freedom with every breath. Hope seemed distant, almost like a figment of dreams I was too afraid to chase. That day, the city seemed alive with mysteries. A whisper of an unexpected encounter floated on the air. I watched as the world danced around the park, but my focus drifted to the nearby food cart. The vendor was packing up, tossing leftover dumplings into a tattered cardboard box that bore witness to countless meals. Each leftover was a small treasure. I felt my stomach rumble, the sensation almost foreign to me. And then it happened. I saw a figure, a stranger, a man with a wild mane of hair, his smile wide and bright like a beacon. He rummaged through that box of leftovers. What would he do? Would he be revolted? I held my breath. Suddenly, he reached in, pulled out a dumpling, and took a huge bite. He savored it, as if it was the finest gourmet meal. Could something so simple bring him joy? My heart fluttered. Something stirred inside me. He glanced around, as if he felt someone watching him. His eyes met mine and held on, giving me a jolt of unexpected connection. I was just a boy in a wheelchair, an unknown face in a sea of strangers. But in that moment, I felt seen. My heart raced again, hope flickering like a candle in the deep. What is it about this stranger? What can leftovers offer me? But before I could comprehend any of it, the man dropped the remains of his meal beside me. I stared at the dumpling like it was a gift from the universe. What did it mean? Why would he leave it? My hands trembled as I reached out. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As I sat there, my heart still racing from the fleeting connection I had felt just moments before, I clasped the dumpling in my trembling hands. The warm, greasy cardboard felt oddly grounding, a reminder that small things could carry weight. It was a token from someone whose life I didn't know, yet who had somehow nudged my heart back to life, even if just a little. But as I brought the dumpling closer, my stomach twisted into knots. I could imagine the conversations that awaited me at home. Would they disapprove? The ever-efficient would argue that food waste was part of the problem, while my mother would probably rush to sanitize the very idea of leftovers. And yet, I was overwhelmed with hunger, not just for food, but for anything that could fill the hollow space inside me. With a shaky breath, I gestured toward my sister, who was chasing after a butterfly in the distance. "Lily," I called out, hoping my voice didn't waver. She turned, and for a moment, I felt a rival's despair. This was my moment to connect. Yet would it be overshadowed by guilt? Her eyes lit up as she rolled the butterfly in the palm of her hand, a fleeting glimpse of innocence. "What is it, Ben?" she asked, her smile radiant against the dusky park background. As she approached, my resolve chipped away. "Look," I said, raising the dumpling slightly. "This guy over there he just gave me this." I nodded toward where the man had stood, but he was already gone, swallowed by the city crowd. "Can I eat it?" she asked without a hint of hesitation, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. I couldn't help but laugh. It was an unexpected moment of lightness amid my tumult. "Actually, I think I should. I'm starving," I replied teasingly, and she giggled, settling beside me in sheer joy. But, just like that, the laughter faded, replaced once again by that familiar weight crushing my chest. As I took a hesitant bite, I was hit with an unexpected burst of flavor, garlic and spice, warm and comforting. It was strange how something so simple could elicit such a wave of nostalgia, reminding me of the dinners at the table with my family. I could almost hear my dad telling stories as we shared our meals, how food was not just sustenance, but a language of love. For a moment, I closed my eyes and let my mind wander, hoping to grasp onto that feeling of belonging. But just as I began to savor the moment, a shadow fell across me. I opened my eyes and saw a group of boys lingering nearby, their stares pinning me in my seat. One of them, a boy who was a year or two older than me with torn baseball gear, smirked and stepped forward, intent on ruining this small moment of peace. "Look at you, Ben. Getting scraps like a dog. Can't even walk, huh? Is that supposed to be inspiring?" His laughter rang out, slicing through the warm evening air and dragging my heart back down into darkness. My sister shrank beside me, her smile faltering as she looked up at me, confusion in her precious eyes. I wanted to shout back, to defend myself, to tell him how his cruelty reflected nothing of worth. But all I managed was a tight-lipped smile, a defensive shield against feeling the sting of his words. Yet inside, the bitterness brewed, a bitter reminder that moments of kindness were fragile, easily shattered by heartlessness. As those boys sauntered away, I felt the warmth of Lily's tiny hand on my knee, grounding me even in despair. "You don't have to listen to them, Ben. You're still you." Her innocence pierced a little further into the deep, dark chasm that threatened to suffocate me. But was she right? Did it matter what they thought, what I felt? As the shadows deepened, I searched for hope in her eyes, the brilliance of her spirit showcasing the glimmer of resilience. In that moment, I knew I had to be both the protector and the protectorate. But a sharp noise broke my focus. We turned to see the man with the wild hair again, weaving through the crowds. Only this time, he was looking directly at us. As he approached, a strange expression tugged at his lips, a mix of concern and warmth as he pointed towards the remnants of greasy cardboard in my lap. "Thought you might need another. I can't let you go hungry, can I?" In that instant, my heart pounded, the weight of life pressing down heavier than ever. I glanced at Lily, at the boys who had just mocked me, and back to the stranger who seemed to see me for who I was beneath the surface. And then the stranger reached into his bag, pulling out something new that he hadn't shown anyone yet, a small, battered book with a crinkled cover, one that could either write my story or close it forever. "Here," he said softly, as if sensing the multitude of emotions swirling inside me. "You look like you could use a story. Everyone needs a little magic to hold on to what lay ahead. An invitation to a world beyond this pain, or just one more piece of hope slowly crumbling in my hand." As I exchanged glances with the stranger, the clamor around me faded, leaving only the question of what tomorrow might bring. Would I dare to open the door he held? In that breathless moment, my heart raced once more, but in the shadows, I could sense something shifting. I never imagined that a paralyzed boy could find hope in a stranger's leftovers. As I sat there, the battered book beckoned, its cover promising tales that might take me away from the pain suffocating me. My fingers lingered over its edges, tracing the creases, feeling the stories imprisoned within. The man's gaze held mine, steady and inviting, as if he understood the unspeakable yearning churning within me, a desire for connection, for escape, for something beyond the everyday struggles that had become my existence. To go on, he encouraged, his voice a soothing balm against the sting of the world outside our small bubble. "Open it. Will it help me?" I whispered, guilt and fragility weaving through my words. Did he even understand the darkness that I constantly wrestled with? "It might," he replied, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "Stories have a way of taking us where we need to go. Sometimes, they show us who we can be." Lily was still beside me, clutching the remnants of my earlier food discovery, her heart unspoiled and full of hope. I could see her warmth radiating, offering me a fragile lifeline as the fears of embarrassment washed over me anew. And yet, as I looked up, I also saw the boys in the distance, lingering like shadows, their laughter echoing like a bitter reminder of my limitations. With a deep breath, I opened the book slowly, each page stiff with potential. The first words dripped like honey, sweet and nostalgic, but my mind quickly rebelled against their simplicity. I was trapped in a reality that felt far from enchanting. Please, just give it a try, the man urged gently, sensing my apprehension. You don't have to dive in head first. Just allow yourself to feel what it offers. You might discover something unexpected. I nodded, still unsure, but the flickering flame of curiosity kept me anchored to the moment. I turned to Lily, hoping to see encouragement in her eyes. But I didn't need to ask. She radiated belief, her small face aglow as if trapped in the magic of possibility. And as I sank deeper into the pages, the words began to unravel a new narrative around me, pulling me from the chains of my reality. I lost track of time, every turn of the page revealing characters that fought their own battles, each triumph echoing my silent cries for resilience. The thrill of it sparked something deep within, a flicker of defiance against the suffocation I had felt from the world. Yet even as my heart soared between the lines, I could still feel the weight of the outside world, its judgment, its insensitivity, and that shadow of paranoia that seemed to whisper, "You don't belong." The stranger remained at my side, his presence grounding, a lighthouse in turbulent waters. He occasionally nodded at the passages I read aloud, his eyes sparkling with understanding and encouragement, which made the words feel less lonely. And with every line I explored, I realized I hungered not just for escape, but also for validation and acknowledgement of my existence, beyond limitations. Suddenly, I stumbled upon a poem nestled between chapters, its words raw and aching, mirroring my internal struggles as if drawn straight from the depths of my soul. The stanza spoke of feeling invisible, of longing for a sliver of light amid overwhelming darkness. My voice trembled as I read it aloud, emotion piercing through every syllable. "See, you're not alone in this," the man said, and his voice was filled with reassurance that ignited something inside me. Just then, a strange sense of connection surged through the air, binding our unspoken experiences together, weaving us into a tapestry of shared struggle. And yet, as if the cosmos conspired to remind me of my reality, a sharp yell sliced through our moment. "Hey, what's going on over there?" It was one of the boys from earlier. The imperious nature of his concern masked the mischief lurking beneath. My heart raced as I glanced back, fear gripping me. Would he approach, taunting once again, ready to crush this budding hope? Would he tear apart this fragile sanctuary I had begun to build with a stranger? In a heartbeat, the vulnerability I felt beneath the heavy gaze hung in the air, a palpable thickness that threatened to engulf me once more. The man beside me, sensing my tension, shifted subtly, readying himself to step in, to protect as best he could. I could feel a bond forming, however fragile it might be. "Let's go," he urged softly, lifting the bag over his shoulder, as if he knew the moment had passed, and we needed to move to stay safe from the shadows of judgment. I hesitated, my heart torn between fleeing and facing my fears. "But I want to stay here," I murmured, my voice breaking. "I understand. But sometimes it's okay to leave a place that does not feel safe. Nature has its way of reclaiming happiness, and it's time to find ours. You deserve to breathe easy, wherever you go," he reassured me, eyes glistening with sincerity. And just as I prepared to rise, feeling Lily's weight shift beside me, a thought crystallized in that fleeting moment. The man wasn't just a stranger offering leftovers. He had awakened something insidious, ember of hope in the shadow of despair. But then, as we turned away from the remnants of the past, the boy's voice broke through my thoughts again. "Running away from your problems, Ben? You look like you need a good kick down the slide." A gasp escaped Lily as she gripped my arm, fear flashing across her innocent face. I froze, caught in a whirlpool of emotions that flipped from fear to anger. I was tired of being the one forced to retreat, tired of being the target of their mockery. And there, at the precipice of a crossroads, the words of the poem lingered in my mind, urging me to respond, to stand tall and loud despite the weight of their judgment. I turned, heart pounding, ready to face them head-on for the first time in years, ready to take that small sliver of hope that had sparked between the pages and give it a voice. But what I found sent a jolt of panic through me, a figure standing behind the boy, a familiar silhouette whose presence was both unexpected and unsettling. "Ben, I've been looking for you." It was my mother, her eyes wide with what looked like a mixture of anger and concern. As she flitted between the shadows, uncertainty flickered in her expression. Had she come to reclaim me, or to unleash the tempest of her disappointment upon my fragile defenses? And in that moment, I felt the threads of my story fray again. Choices hung heavy around me like a storm cloud, and I held the weight of them in my hands, teetering on the brink of revelation or destruction. Would I find the courage to embrace this curious stranger's gift, or would I falter beneath the gravity of past experiences? The world stood still as I searched for my voice among the chaos that threatened to swallow me whole. But just then, the ground beneath me trembled, and I sensed the earth shifting as new revelations intertwined. I had opened myself to hope, but what if hope could only lead to heartbreak? Would I be strong enough to face whatever came next, or would my past silence me once again? The flickering ember of courage wavered, and it was then that I realized the only thing scarier than losing hope was breaking away from the chains that had bound me, only to face the unknown that awaited beyond the horizon. My mother's eyes bore into mine, a mix of emotions shifting like clouds in a tempest. Her voice, usually a soothing whisper, crackled with tension. "Ben, we need to talk. Now." The world around me blurred as I struggled to comprehend the weight of her words. This was a moment I had dreaded, her presence a storm breaching my sanctuary, a reminder of the suffocating expectations that had always loomed over me. I felt Lily's hand tighten around my arm, her concern morphing into panic as she fought to grasp what was happening. That I turned to the stranger, seeking support, but he had stepped back, letting his presence recede into the background like a fading memory. I could see the understanding etched in his face, yet I missed that anchor, the kind smile that had felt like a shield against the world's malice. "Can it wait?" I managed to utter, desperation clawing at my throat. "I'm busy." "Busy? What's so important, sitting in the dirt with?" A derisive laugh punctuated his sentence. The boy's taunting tone lassoed me back into my reality, a bitter reminder of the susceptibility I felt. Laughter ricocheted inside me like a gunshot. I felt my gaze waver as I turned back to my mother, fighting against the oncoming tide that threatened to pull me back under. She stood with a clenched jaw, the kind of rigidity I had known too well. Her concern had long since hardened into something akin to panic. "This isn't the place for you, Ben. You know that. Let's go home." "Home?" The word tasted sour on my tongue, like ashes. What does that even mean for me anymore? Just another cage? I didn't know where the words were coming from. They spilled out like a crack in a dam, unleashing pent-up frustrations I had long restrained. The stranger had taken a step forward again, positioning himself between us, as if defending something inside me that I hadn't yet grasped the flicker of hope. "It's not your fault," he said softly, aimed at me, but directed toward my mother. "What do you know?" she snapped, the bite of her words making my chest constrict. "He needs to understand consequences." "Consequences?" I spat, my voice rising above the chaos, igniting years of suppression. "What about understanding? What about compassion? I have a right to be here, to experience life, to feel Ben." My mother's voice thundered, drowning out the words I tried to cling to. "You don't get to choose what this looks like, not yet. You're still a child." "A child?" I echoed, disbelief mingling with rebellion. "You think being paralyzed makes me a child? You think that your decisions robbing me of my voice don't count?" Each sentence felt like a knife thrown towards the elephant in the room, the echoes of parents who just didn't understand. Fumbling in my heartbeat, the mixture of rage and hurt began to transform into something unexpected, my own imperative strength brandishing a sword of newfound purpose. Behind my mother, the boy smirked, delighting in my tears. It fueled something inside me that had been dormant. As cruel as he was, my emotions now crystallized in clarity. The stranger placed a tentative hand on my shoulder, steadying me, grounding me in the storm of my emotions. "You are strong enough to voice how all of this makes you feel, Ben. You're allowed to have that." Just as I felt a surge of courage sparking along my spine, my mother's expression shifted. Her defenses faltered, and sadness washed over her face, unveiling the cracks of her facade. "I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm just trying to protect me." I bit back, frustration boiling at the surface. "From what? Feeling alive?" "No, Ben," she whispered, the words barely escaping her lips, "from seeing you broken." Her admission hung heavy in the air, striking me like a reality check, a reminder of the love entwined in control, of sacrifice woven in pain. For an instant, I saw her not just as my mother, but as a person flawed, scared, burdened by her own fears of failure and loss, echoing through her in waves, drowning us both in questions left unasked. But just as I opened my mouth to respond, another authority figure materialized from the periphery, an adult whose stance screamed intervention. "Everything all right here?" A woman in a park uniform approached, arm extended as if to bridge the gap spiraling wider between us. Before I could process or vocalize anything, my mother turned sharply toward the newcomer, her panic reshaping itself into a tight smile. "Oh yes, we were just discussing different perspectives. Different perspectives." The very notion curled in my gut like a knife pressing too deep. The park was shifting away, a reminder of the thin veneer separating us. And in that moment, I felt the weight of the expectations crashing down once more. "Ben," my mother said, her voice softer now, altering the dynamics with a sincerity that caught the ground beneath my feet unsteady. "Will you please come home? We can really talk." I could feel hope, fragile as it was, warring against the fear of regression, of falling back into a life where I was tethered to someone else's choices. The ground trembled beneath me, and my heart raced, teetering on an edge. Then, as I turned to look at Lily, her eyes wide, glimmering with a mixture of concern and a flicker of unwavering belief, I realized that the stranger was gone, and with him, the chance I'd taken to redefine my own acceptance. "Ben, please," my mother implored, voice quivering with an emotion that echoed my own, so many unsaid words lingering like shadows. But just as the tide receded, leaving the flicker of hope to seep beneath the cracks, I caught the boy's triumphant glare. The whisper of doubt floated back like a wave, threatening to engulf me anew. I felt my answer dancing at the tip of my tongue, but as the clock ticked, urgency conspired against me. This moment could mark a shift, or it could solidify the chains that still bound me. And there, standing in the heart of it all, a revelation brushed against my consciousness, a deeper understanding lurking just beyond comprehension. Would I relinquish the fleeting sense of self that had sparked through my conversations with a stranger, now lost in the maelstrom of family expectations? Would I cave under the weight of her request, or would I dare to voice my own true desires, no matter the impending storm? Hope felt heavy now, a burden rather than a gift, and I stood at the very edge of change, caught between the familiar shadows of my past and the lingering possibilities of my future. But one truth remained suspended in the air like a whisper: every departure brings with it the fear of falling further into darkness. And as I drew in a breath to speak, the ground shifted once more, and I was left wondering if I was teetering on the edge of liberation or the brink of an unfathomable abyss. My breath hitched as I stood at a crossroads, both of my parents on one side, each battling their own demons, and my own heart fueling a desire for liberation that felt tantalizingly close. The seconds stretched, taut as a bowstring pulled to its limit, and in that suffocating pause, my thoughts tangled wildly. Would I give in to my mother, return to the suffocating embrace of familiarity that sought to contain me? Or would I seek out the unknown, even if it meant flipping the narrative I had lived by all my young life? "Ben," her voice blurred into the background, drawing me from my mental whirlpool. I peered into my mother's eyes, aching to see beyond the spark of fear igniting her maddening insistence on control, beyond the shadow of my perceived failures. But all I could discern was the blinding love she poured into her choices, distilled with a confusing cocktail of fear and protection. Beside me, Lily remained my silent ally, yet her presence flooded me with warmth and an unspoken promise that I could rise above the turmoil. "Whatever you choose, I'm here," her gaze seemed to say, offering companionship in a space where loneliness threatened to swallow me whole. "Why can't I just live?" I finally said, the words cutting through the confusion swirling in my mind like a sudden gust of wind dispersing fog. "Why can't I have a say in what's next?" My mother's expression hardened as if I had struck her with an unseen force. "Because, Ben, you're not ready. You need people around you who can help you navigate this. I'm trying to keep you safe," she implored, desperation leaking through the cracks of her resolve. "Safety," I echoed, the weight of that word pulling my heart into a turbulent sea. Or what you think is safety. With each heartbeat, doubt morphed into anger, and anger began to falter under the soft sigh of hope hidden somewhere deep within me. I wanted to challenge her, to yell that being locked away in a gilded cage wasn't safety at all. I deserves the messy, chaotic reality of life, the warmth of laughter, the taste of freedom achieved through struggle. That pulse of strength surged within me. And finally, I asked the question that had lingered, brimming with an urgency that coursed through my veins. What if I don't want to go home? What if I want to find my own way? For a heartbeat, everything hung suspended in the air like the faintest weight of a whisper. The world around us, children running, dogs barking, the vibrancy of life pushing forward was an orchestra, and we were tragic solos caught in a misinterpretation. My mother's breath caught in her throat, her face a canvas of pain and realization. I saw so much in her concern, love, unspoken fears. Yet, just as I thought the dam would break, just as clarity flickered on the horizon, a thunderous crash echoed through the park, a raucous fall of vine-covered limbs crashing to the ground. The sound rattled me, reverberating in synchrony with an unkind chuckle I recognized as the boy's taunt from earlier. An ironic reminder that nothing is simple. What's going on here? A voice emerged from the chaos, an uninvited authority collapsing against my moment of vulnerability. A figure clad in navy blue, a park ranger, stepped forward with an authoritative confidence that seemed misplaced. I hear some yelling. Everything all right? My mother quickly plastered on a smile that now felt like a mask. We're just having a difference of opinion, she said, yet her eyes darted to me, a signal both hopeful and pleading. I couldn't keep up with the shifting dynamics. My words hung in the air, a precious truth rendered impotent by unwelcome intrusion. My heart sank. Would they sweep me back home, where I feared being lost in anonymity? Or would they let me stay and fight against the establishment that so brutally defined me? Ben, come on, let's take a walk. Lily attempted to breach the dwindling space between us, her voice soothing yet insistent. I could feel the kindness radiating from her, a force akin to sunlight chasing the shadows away, but could I trust it enough to step into the unknown? No, my voice rang out surprisingly firm, a final wall against impending regression. I need to resolve this. Waves of tension coursed through my mother as she weighed the burgeoning dilemma, uncertainty flickering like candlelight in her eyes. Ben, she began, a muffled plea caught somewhere deep in her chest. But before she could finish, the ranger interjected, You know, it's important you both talk this out. But words aren't going to reshape understanding alone. Sometimes we need the ground to shift beneath us. In those words, I felt an unexpected stirring of hope. Who was this woman? A chance for new perspectives was opening a door I had never anticipated unlocking at this fragile juncture. I don't need rescuing, I said, sharper than I intended. I need to discover how to navigate this on my own. And then, something bright burst forth, cradling that flicker of hope I desperately clung to. Can you truly say you believe in me? I directed the question at my mother, defiance laced through my voice. A heartbeat passed, her eyes reflecting a storm of emotions, shock, fear, and that old, familiar love. Was there a way forward? A glimmer of understanding lurking beneath the riptide that threatened to pull us all under. Just then, I glanced towards the boy, who stood a comfortable distance behind the ranger now, a shadow skimming the edges of my awareness. His smirk had faded to a frown, perhaps feeling something unexpected, but the spark in his eyes remained a reflection of darker emotions simmering under surface. And that was when the thought pierced me, sharp and illuminating like a lighthouse beam in darkness. Was he more than just my tormentor? Did he, too, struggle with his own battles, masked bravado shielding a vulnerable heart? My question hung thick in the air as my gaze darted between my mother, the ranger, Lily, and the boy, the world suddenly too large, yet too small. Soothing warmth and bitter cold swirled as I wrestled with the new complexity unfolding before me. What if there's more to it all? I whispered, turmoil threading through every nuance of my being. I stood on the precipice of something greater than myself, questioning how change could bloom from adversity, not just for me, but for everyone standing in this charged space. The stage was set, and a revelation lurked in the shadows, waiting to emerge as I stood on that precipice. But first, I would have to to break or to build, to let go or to grow. Just then, a sudden wind ripped through the trees, rustling the leaves and shaking loose a sense of possibility. The moment that had been stretching so long reached an apex, and I knew something had changed, and the ground beneath us trembled once more. Would it usher me toward liberation or further into a tightening grip of uncertainty? The gust of wind whipped through the park, scattering remnants of yesterday's laughter into the air like fallen leaves. I stood there, anchored in a moment that felt paradoxically relentless and still. My pulse raced as I felt the energy shift the air thick with expectation, an unscripted performance unfolding before our bewildered eyes. Lily stepped forward, seemingly unbothered by the tension, and offered a reassuring smile to both my mother and me. "How about we all just take a breath?" she proposed gently, not an attempt to dissolve the confrontation, but rather to create a space for dialogue that felt safe enough to explore our vulnerabilities. The ranger, sensing the need for a delicate approach, turned toward us. "Exactly. You don't have to reach a resolution right now. It's okay to be confused. Sometimes, the process itself is a starter for something remarkable." My mother's posture softened slightly, her rigid shoulders loosening just enough for me to glimpse a flicker of hope. But it was little more than a spark, a faint light threatened by shadows of doubt that still clung to her expression. "Ben, I've just always wanted what's best for you, you know that, right?" A visceral warmth surged within me at her words, intermingling with resentment that refused to release its grip. What if what's best isn't what I want? What if I need to find out what's best for me? Her gaze faltered, a veil of uncertainty crossing her features. I felt as though I was touching something deep within her, some shared understanding cloaked in layers of parental instinct. In that weighty silence, I found tenacity rising within me. "Can we just be honest, Mom? Can we together explore the idea that maybe what I need isn't what you've laid out before me?" Lily quietly joined my side, the warmth from her presence like a gentle beacon. I could feel her support buoying me, a reminder that I was not alone in this struggle. But even as I stood my ground, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone else was watching, waiting for his moment to leap in. My gaze gravitated back to the boy. He seemed altered somehow, the smirk replaced by apparent contemplation. What was happening behind his closed-off exterior? Ben. His name, like a sledgehammer, cracked open a window of curiosity within me. What shadows lingered behind his bravado? "Hey," I called out to him suddenly, breaking from the rhythm of the surrounding conversation. "What do you think?" He blinked at me as if my question had caught him off guard. "What do you mean?" "About everything. About choices. About what it means to find your way." My heart thudded loudly, breaking the silence that veiled the truth I was desperate to uncover. The murmur of the park faded into the background as the boy's expression shifted, revealing he was more than a mere tormentor. "Not everyone gets a choice," he replied quietly, his voice low yet heard. "Some of us just go along with what we have." In that moment, an unexpected connection sparked between us, a mirror reflecting the jagged edges of my own struggles, and the raw fragility in his words cut through the tensions in my heart. "But what if we can change things? What if you could choose?" Those words struck a chord, resonating with unspent wisdom that surged through me like an electric current. He hesitated, uncertainty flickering across his face, and for the first time, I sensed he was grappling with something a crossroad of his own. "And what if I don't even know which way to go?" he admitted, lowering his gaze to the ground as if ashamed. "I don't either," I confessed, "but standing still feels worse than stumbling forward. Don't you feel that deep inside?" It was a simple question, yet the weight of honesty braided through the air between us. I realized I was beginning to pierce through the veil that shielded him, one messy confession at a time. Lily stepped closer, sensing the shift, and added gently, "It's okay to not have all the answers. Sometimes we find our way in the sharing, in just asking the hard questions even if we don't know where they'll lead us." As we stood there conversing, my mother regarded me, her expression transforming subtly from concern to wonder, as if she had suddenly realized how courageous it was to embrace uncertainty. Then, before I could gather my swirling thoughts, the boy spoke again, his voice trembling with an emotion that caught me off guard. "There's nothing wrong with being paralyzed sometimes. Fear is the worst jailer. How do I choose otherwise?" His honesty, raw and unedited, echoed through my heart. The boy, who initially seemed like a figure of mockery, had unveiled a crack in my own fierce, raw humanity pulsing beneath the surface. Could it be that our stories were intertwined in unexpected ways? And just like that, a looming shadow, which had previously consumed me with dread, began to feel a little less oppressive. Perhaps we were all merely searching for paths, searching for hope amid the wreckage of misunderstanding. But as the air thickened with evolving revelations, a shrill sound pierced through the unmistakable wail of an approaching ambulance blaring through the park. My heart constricted, nodding at the sound that echoed dread. The ranger's composure shifted at the siren, an urgency suddenly slicing through the fragile moment. "All right, folks, stay safe here. I'll check what's going on." My breath caught in my throat as he stepped away, and I turned toward my mother just in time to see the flicker of concern shadow her features. "Ben," she said, voice small yet urgent. "I'm scared." In that admission, I felt the impending storm swirl around USA joint uncertainty that was both personal and collective. I had assumed our thoughts danced around my own struggle, but here was the crux of shared humanity emerging amid the chaos. "Maybe we can face it together," I dared to whisper, but even as I spoke, the ground beneath felt precarious, our fragile truce hanging by a thread as the ambulance pulled into the park. A realization washed over me. The truth we needed was waiting not only in the silence shared with my mother or in the exchange with the boy, but within the vulnerability we all harbored deep inside, waiting for a moment of courage to ignite it. Yet, as the sirens wailed, one unresolved question gnawed at me, threatening to overflow my cautious hope. What if the unfolding tragedy out there was merely the beginning of our storm, beckoning to uproot our fragile newfound understanding? My heart trembled at the uncertainty of what would come next as the world swirled around us, demanding that we all confront our choices, blinders off, hearts wide open. The ambulance doors swung open, spilling forth a cacophony of urgency as paramedics rushed towards a cluster gathered under the old oak tree, their shouts blending with the wail of the siren. Instinctively, my chest tightened, the electric hum of fear reverberating through me. My mother's hand sought mine, a lifeline amidst terrifying uncertainty, and I felt the shared pulse of anxiety that coursed between us. "What's happening?" I asked Lily, my voice betraying the quiver of concern lodged in my throat. "That I don't know," she said, her eyes frantic yet flickering with determination. "But we should see if anyone needs help. There might be something we can do." A flicker of doubt tugged at me. Help how? I barely knew what I was capable of myself. But the surge of adrenaline propelled me forward, a silent agreement passing between us as we exchanged glances filled with a complex mix of fear, hope, and a longing for connection. As we approached the scene, a woman stood weeping quietly, crumpled against the base of the oak. A small boy, no more than 5, lay motionless on the ground, surrounded by concerned adults. The paramedics worked quickly, their movements practiced yet urgent, an eerie dance of medicine beneath the protective arms of the trees. With each pulse of movement, I braced myself against the weight of dread pressing down on my chest. Then I felt him beside me, Ben, the boy who was now a thread in my tapestry of fear and hope. Staring at the scene, he squinted as if trying to process the events unfolding before us. "Why does it feel like everything's breaking?" he murmured, his voice barely above the rustle of the leaves. That I turned to him, surprised at the depth of despair pouring from his words. "It's terrifying, isn't it?" He nodded, vulnerability etching itself across his face. "Sometimes, I feel like I'm waiting for my chance, but then things like this." His voice trailed off, unable to encompass the enormity of the moment. Suddenly, a thought struck me, igniting a spark of courage within. What if we do something? Not just for ourselves, but for that little boy? He turned to face me, eyes wide. "Like what?" Maybe we can somehow channel our fear into hope. A simple act. Something the little guy can hold on to. My mind raced, unable to form a solid idea, but the notion of taking action rooted itself deep within. "We could make a card, or something to cheer him up." As if stirred by the thought, Lily joined in. "Yes, we could gather everyone around and share something that makes us smile. Maybe the boy will feel less alone." I could hardly believe the idea sparked between us people, vulnerable yet willing to share pieces of themselves. "Let's do it," I urged, stepping back to the group forming near the oak. As we began gathering some paper and markers from the park tables, I sensed Ben hesitating behind me. I turned to him and said, "Come on, we can't leave him alone in this, can we? He deserves to know that someone cares." After a moment of quiet contemplation, Ben nodded, shadows of fear lifting just slightly from his face. Together, we wrote messages of hope and joy, sharing childhood memories that warmed our hearts. A simple joke here, a funny drawing there. It felt like the world narrowed into vibrant colors amidst the gray sorrow of the scene. Soft laughter began to ripple through our small gathering. One by one, people joined in, sharing their creations, smiles breaking like sunlight through clouds. Even my mother found the strength to add a drawing, a blossoming flower, her eyes glistening not just with tears, but with recognition of connection. "Look," I pointed, my heart thawing at the sight. "He's waking up." In that moment, the small boy stirred, eyes fluttering open to the chaos around him. Uncertain yet intrigued, he peered at the faces encircling him, surprise blooming on his tiny features as he took in the rainbow of drawings and heartfelt words. As he glanced at the cards, a tentative smile teased the corners of his mouth, igniting a flicker of deep relief that passed through the circle like a tremor of shared understanding. But amid this fragile warmth, reality clawed at the edges of our moment. The chatter around us began to dim as paramedics continued to work, the sirens fading into a distant echo. Would the adorable glow of innocence be enough? At that instant, a harrowing shout pierced through the gathering darkness. "No, no, you can't. Please, don't." A woman sprinted towards us, her face a mask of horror, limbs thrashing wildly as she reached for the small boy on the ground. Gasps erupted, chaos reigniting as the paramedics struggled to restrain her. My heart raced, and I felt the air grow thick with dread. The dance of hope we had created now at the mercy of unfolding heartbreak. I turned to Ben, who reeled back, terror clouding his eyes, and for a fleeting moment, I saw within him the same raw vulnerability that thrummed in my desperate chest. "What do we do?" he whispered, panic threading through his voice that I swallowed hard, realizing our moment of hope now hung by a thread, ready to unravel completely. "We stay strong. For him, for our stories." As the scene around us spun further into turmoil, one thought blared within me, echoing with dreadful certainty. Some storms arrive suddenly, uprooting even the most fragile moments of hope. But in the storm's midst, would we find our way back to the light? The cacophony around us morphed into a surreal haze, a blur of desperate voices and frantic movements. I could feel my heart drumming wildly, each beat matching the rising intensity of the chaos. As the woman lunged toward the boy, I caught a glimpse of her haunted eyes, a mix of anguish and fear, as if her very existence hinged on the outcome of the moment unfolding in front of us. "Let her through," a voice shouted, and the paramedics stumbled back, their practiced poise fraying at the edges. I exchanged a glance with Ben, and the terror lurking in his gaze mirrored my own spiraling thoughts. I had never seen anything like this before. Would the woman hurt herself or anyone else? Lily stepped forward, a silent yet resolute presence. "We should help her," she urged, her voice somehow cutting through the chaos. Instinctively, we grouped together, forming a wall of compassion as we tried to bridge the emotional gap between the distraught woman and the boy. As if sensing our collective kindness, the boy's eyes widened, fixating on his mother as though she were the beacon guiding him through the storm. "Mom," he whispered, his voice a fragile thread reaching out amidst the turbulence. The woman stumbled to a stop, her hands trembling as she stared at her son, disbelief painting her features. "You're okay," she breathed, her eyes flickering with a desperate hope that collided against the harsh reality of the situation. But before she could reach him, the paramedics pulled her back gently yet firmly, not wanting to disrupt the delicate balance of care surrounding her son. "He needs you to stay calm," one of the paramedics said, his tone soothing yet authoritative. "We're taking care of him." The small boy began to cry, tremors of uncertainty evident in his voice. "I don't want to go," he pleaded, the innocence of his words piercing through the shroud of chaos and leaving a prickle of vulnerability in the air. "Then don't go," I found myself whispering, surprised at my own audacity to speak up. "Just breathe. We're all here with you." The boy turned his watery gaze towards me, his confusion shifting to something more profound, a desire for connection, an unyielding hope that perhaps he wasn't alone in this tumultuous moment after all. "I'm scared," he said softly, the utterance dulling the noise of the surrounding pandemonium. Lily knelt down beside him, drawing out one of the cards we had made. "Look, we all made these for you," she said, her voice like honey pouring into rough fragments. "They're reminders that even when things feel dark, there are people who care. You can be brave, and we believe in you." The boy reached out for the drawing, his small fingers trembling as he took it from her. As he glanced at the doodles and words filled with light, I noted a flicker in his expression, a flicker of understanding, as though the realization began enveloping him that there existed a world beyond this chaos, one where laughter still bloomed amidst uncertainty. "Mama?" he called again, softer now, reaching out toward her. In that moment, something seemed to shift within the woman. The flood of apprehension and despair softened as she inhaled deeply, tears streaming down her face. "I'm right here, sweetheart, I'm right here." She inched closer but remained restrained, her eyes never leaving her son. "I'm so sorry for everything. Just please, stay with me." The depth of their connection was palpable, an echo of the love that even turmoil could not sever. I felt a weight lifting within me, a sensation of hope blossoming once more, though fragile and tethered to uncertainty. Yet the rising tensions around us imploded again, slicing through the moment. "We need to transport him," a paramedic announced, urgency threading through every word. "I know." The woman shrieked, the strength of her motherly love bursting into the chaos like an unstoppable force. "I can't lose him, not like this." Panic laced the air thickly, and in a heartbeat, the atmosphere shifted. The boy's innocent plea had transformed into something raw and real, fighting against the dark clouds that threatened to consume us all. And, in that maelstrom of emotion, I felt it deep within, an inexplicable sense of urgency rising. "Ben," I shouted, locking eyes with him, desperation compelling my words. "We need to show her the cards, the love surrounding them. They're not just drawings, they're reminders that they're not alone." Without waiting for a response, I dove into the pile of cards we had created, beginning to pull them together. Ben joined me, urgency carving lines across his youthful features. "This needs to reach them," he breathed, glancing towards the mother, whose heart was so visibly entangled in despair. As we approached the woman, trembling yet resolute, I could feel the tension coiling, ready to snap under the weight of sorrow. But what if our small act could foster a glimmer of hope amidst the turmoil? "We wrote these for you," I said, forcing confidence into my voice. "For him, so he knows he's loved, even when everything is breaking." The woman's eyes flicked to the drawings, and for a moment, a breath of calm washed over us all, as hope shimmered in the darkness. Would she accept our offering? Would it bridge the chasm of fear that loomed between them? But just then, the boy's little hand, trembling with vulnerability, reached toward the cards. As he stretched forward, the pulse of uncertainty in the air thickened, and with it, the realization that the ground we had built our moment of hope upon felt more tenuous than ever. All at once, a deafening crash echoed behind us, sending shockwaves through the gathering. I turned, my heart racing as dread flooded my senses. What now? Would hope twist into despair once more before we could fight back the darkness? The deafening crash echoed not just through the chaos surrounding us, but also deep within, cracking open a fissure of dread that threatened to engulf the small bubble of hope we had built around the boy and his mother. Ben and I spun around, our hands still clenched tightly around the cards, ready to fight against the tumultuous waves of fear that surged forward like a tempest. In the distance, I could see a group of officers pushing their way through the crowd, their uniforms stark against the scene of tremored hearts and shattered trust. "Stay back," one of them commanded, as he leapt over debris scattered across the ground. The urgency in his voice wrapped around me like a choking vine, crisp authority battling against the chaos that felt almost alive. I glanced back at the woman, whose face was a portrait of helplessness and anguish. She looked at the officers with wild eyes, and her voice cracked with anguish. "Please, just let me go to him. He needs me." The desperation clawed at her throat, making each plea sound more like an anguished cry than a request. "Ma'am, it's for your safety," the officer urged, but I could see the way her inner storm brewed, defiant and furious, not wanting to reformulate her grief into something manageable. "Mama." The boy's voice broke through the noise, a delicate thread tugging at the hearts of everyone around him. He squirmed against the hands of the paramedic who was diligently working to assess his injuries. "I'm right here. I want you." I took a step forward again, the air thick with the weight of their bond, and our small act of bravery began to weigh more heavily upon my heart. In that fleeting moment, it became clear. Everything we were doing seemed so minor compared to the tempest around us. Drawing in a breath, I turned back to the boy, frantically grasping for anything that could tether us together amidst the chaos. "Look," I shouted, thrusting the colorful cards forward, my voice straining from the effort. "These are for you. And for your mom." Slowly, a flicker of recognition sparked in his wide, tear-stained eyes, and as they shifted from the illustrations toward the cards, I saw his small body begin to calm. Just a few moments, I thought. Just a glimmer of connection amidst the madness. "Stay with me," I continued, my heart racing. "Everyone here wants to help you. You're not alone in this. We've got your back." A surge of warmth built in the depths of my chest, illuminating the corners of my mind that had begun to drown in darkness. I only hoped the light reached him too. Lily stepped forward, her calm presence encircling him. "Your mom is going to be okay. And you're going to be okay. Together, you will get through this." There was an unwavering strength in her voice, a fierce belief that kindled hope in the dying embers surrounding us. Just then, the police officer glanced back towards us, and I could see the slightest hint of confusion ripple across his face as he took in our small display of courage. Hope and disbelief danced in his eyes as the scene unfolded behind him, revealing the tender dance of a mother's love trying to weave through darkness, facing a flickering light. However, before we could fully solidify the connection, a sudden flicker from the shadows caught my attention. A figure stepped forward from behind the throng, his movements swift and determined. As he came into the light, my breath caught in my throat. It was Jamal. That I hadn't seen him in months, nor had I expected him to show up here. He was someone whose past lingered just like the heartbreak we all were swathed in, his name often entwined with the tapestry of my own fears about loss. My heart raced as I stumbled back. Streetlights gleamed against his skin, illuminating the contours of his expression, conflicted, yet resolute. But before I could speak, Jamal's eyes locked onto the boy and then shifted eagerly to his mother, his expression morphing from recognition to something else entirely, an unsettling blend of urgency and familiarity, as if he had come to share a secret destined to rip open our fragile moment of hope. Without even acknowledging Ben and me standing beside him, Jamal moved toward the woman. They appeared to know one another. "I can help," he said, his voice brimming with rawness, as if he was calling upon every shard of strength he had and channeling it toward the crumbling scene. But the moment he uttered those words, something shifted within me. Was this simply kindness, or was there another intention lurking in the shadows? Could it possibly be that the storm had conjured up not merely chaos, but hidden truths from the past that might once again unravel the fragile tethering of hope we had begun to build? As the woman nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks, the atmosphere thickened once more, making it harder to breathe, harder to discern the light from the darkness, and with it, the heavy realization that with hope came uncertainty, every glimmer shadowed by the fear of loss. The cliff that awaited us, uncharted and treacherous, lingered close at hand as I caught the glance between Jamal and the woman. I could not shake the feeling that, somehow, this moment was merely the beginning of another unraveling, a prelude to a greater storm that would test our hearts in ways we could never have anticipated. I never imagined that a paralyzed boy could find hope amidst the storm raging inside and outside of him. But here we were, balancing on the precipice of something transformative. The tension thickened, wrapping around us like a gossamer thread, whispering promises of connection and healing as well as the lurking shadows of heartbreak. As Jamal stepped forward, I could see the hesitance in the woman's eyes morph into a glimmer of recognition. Her son's innocence was their bridge. Had he come just in time to save this moment or unravel it completely? "I've seen you before," she said slowly, confusion and awareness weaving through her voice. "You were there when—" "Yes," he replied, the tension in his shoulders dissipating slightly as he stepped closer. I'm here to help. Just trust me." In that moment, his words carried a weight that filled the air, heavy yet imbued with a sense of understanding that seemed to transcend our individual struggles. As the embrace between the mother and her child deepened, a palpable thread of love sparked between them, igniting a flicker of warmth amid the chaos. "Let's talk," Jamal said, gesturing toward the paramedics who were now occupying the boy's attention, unwittingly offering solace even in their professional urgency. "There's something I need to explain, but I can't do it here." The flicker of fear danced in his eyes, but so did another emotion, something softer, almost fragile. For a moment, we were suspended in time, clinging to the hope that radiated from that boy and his mother, as well as from the courageous figures surrounding them. In that silence, I felt the layers of my own anxiety peeling away like the outer skin of a fruit, revealing the sweetness within. Together, I whispered to Ben, as if solidifying our bond in an unshakable pact. "We must rally our strength, our hope. This moment is too important to let slip away." He nodded, shooting me a grin that felt like sunlight breaking through the clouds. But suddenly, the darkness began to crawl back in a reminiscent fear that threatened to cave in on this fragile space we had created. I looked around, suddenly acutely aware of the weight of our surroundings, the eyes of onlookers, the simmering anxiety resting heavy in the air. Behind me, my mother stood, her own struggles no longer laced with judgment, but threaded with genuine concern, the walls between us crumbling with each exchange of vulnerability we dared to undertake. As the scene began to unfold, we found ourselves moving in instinctual harmony, Lily and I, Ben and the once unknown boy, bound by our collective cry for help, a need that echoed in the way we offered each other our light while grappling with the ebb and flow of darkness. It was as if the universe had conspired to orchestrate this moment, stitching our lives together with pieces of both anguish and tenderness. "Please, let us help you feel less alone," I urged, instinctively lifting the cards toward the mother and son, my voice carrying warmth laced with iron resolve. "We made these for you to remind you that even when it feels like love has gone dark, there is still light left here among us." I caught her gaze on the cards, and just like that, I could see a dawning realization painting her features, hope filling in the cracks of her despair. "Mom," the boy cried, extending his hand toward her. His innocent strength somehow buoyed me, urging us all to step forward, to stand beside them as an unyielding wall against fear. And then, as if in perfect synchrony, we stepped closer together, uniting to create a sacred buffer around them, one that declared we would see them through this dark night. Her small hand shook as she gripped the cards, and I saw the moment when everything shifted, where recognition replaced despair. Eyes filled with tears reflected everything her heart had fought against: the self-doubt, the panic, the worry of being inadequate. "You're not alone," she breathed with reverence, and in that heartbeat, I believed those words would not merely be a sentiment. They would transform into a lifeline. "Together," I repeated, feeling the profound weight of our collective experiences igniting something inside me, urging me to shed any remnants of fear that had once dictated my reality. "Together, we can navigate this storm. Whatever comes next, we will face it." As Jamal stood nearby, carefully assessing the emotional landscape, I could feel the boundaries of the spaces we had created rippling with energy, shadows of resentment dissipated in the light of our shared truths. The boy nodded, a ghost of a smile anchoring the tension brewing deep within him. As a soft breeze drifted through the park, it felt as if hope was a tangible force, wrapping around us and urging us to breathe, to forge ahead. That I took another step forward, lingering on the moment before looking at my mother and Ben, their eyes lighting with resolve. "We don't find strength in silence. We do it together in our honesty, vulnerability, and willingness to embrace the unknown." A resounding flicker ignited in my chest as I cast my voice over the crowd, uniting those around us: the onlookers, the paramedics, Jamal, the mother, and her son. Hope grows in the cracks of despair. It always does. Life will challenge us in ways we can't foresee. But together, let's stand with this family. Together, we can build a world where love conquers fear. The air vibrated with energy. The walls of uncertainty seemed to melt away as the ripples of connection pulsed outward. People began to step forward, joining us in our chorus of compassion and affirmation, echoing our words until they reverberated throughout the park, filling every empty space with the warmth of community that I in that moment. My heart swelled with something raw exhilaration and despair entwined in a gentle embrace, a revelation blossoming amidst the unfolding chaos. And as we birthed hope afresh in that park, surrounded by our newfound allies, the darkness trembled at the edges, realizing it could no longer hold dominion over the light that was breaking loose within us. Together, I breathed, and I could feel the collective pulse echo through our hearts, binding us in a tapestry of love woven from threads of hope, kinship, and shared vulnerability. In the heart of that storm, we discovered that even the smallest flickers of light, nurtured by connection and compassion, could illuminate the darkest nights and guide us toward dawn. And in that collective exhale of hope, I realized that perhaps I hadn't just found my own way. I'd helped others find theirs, to a truth that would ripple through the annals of our intertwined lives long after that day. Hope wasn't a singular path. It was an endless journey, expanding into the horizon with every brave step we chose to take. Together, forever entwined in the heart of our stories that I in that moment, I knew one undeniable truth. Hope thrives when we choose to embrace the beautiful mess of being human, navigating life hand in hand, no matter where the journey leads us. And at that moment, I could finally breathe again.